How's it going, guys? This is Nick at Stridewise.com, and today I'm taking a look at what might be the most beloved and famous dress Chelsea on the planet, the Carmina Chelsea. So Carmina is one of those boot companies that has kind of a cult-like following, but like for good reason, right? But it's not really the sort of boot brand that's super popular among the heritagey, red-wingy, beater boot sort of crowd. For many, Carmina is the dress boot maker. I don't do a lot of boots on my channel, a lot of dress boots that is, but I have been meaning to try Carmina's Chelsea since the first day I started Stridewise, and I actually went to this store in Grand Central here in New York to try and get myself a pair. The pros were that they gave me coffee and cookies while I waited for them to find my pair. The downside was that they didn't have my pair and they didn't email me back like they said they would when they had it in stock, Carmina. But nonetheless, they emailed me out of the blue and asked if they could send me a couple of boots to review, so I am. So full disclosure, this is for free. They gave me these for free, and they're not paying me to do the review or anything. This is not an ad. I know there are a lot of people who have commented on a certain video about Carmina Chelsea's on YouTube that it seemed a lot like a commercial. This is an actual review. I've been actually wearing these in for quite a while now. I'm gonna take a good close look at the Carmina Chelsea boot. The stuff of legend in the Goodyear welted community, and yes, they are Goodyear welted, which is very uncommon for a dressy European boot. And it's also kind of uncommon given the fact that the company actually predates the Goodyear welt itself. It was founded 3 years before its invention in 1866 on the Spanish island of Mallorca, where they're still headquartered today and currently run by the great-grandson of the founder, Matthias Pujadas. And you could write a whole book about the heritage of Carmina and go on and on, but my videos really get too long these days. So let's just kind of dive into the boot. Let's take a look at the aesthetic. This boot here is the world famous black Chelsea boot on the Simpson last. The Simpson last, and I apologize for overusing this word in the review, but it is sleek. Some say narrow. It is definitely true that this boot does not come in wider widths, and many people find it a bit too narrow. But if you know anything about dress shoes and dress boots, you know that the slimmer they are, the dressier they are. That's a bit of a generalization, but that does ring true with this boot. It's a very, very sleek, very handsome look. The question of whether or not you can wear Chelsea boots with a suit is a controversial one. I come from Australia, I live in New York. In Australia, the R.M. Williams Chelsea boot is so much part of the fabric of society that it is very common to see guys wearing them with a suit. As for America, opinions are a little bit more mixed. Here I'm wearing it with a gray suit. Here I am wearing it with more of like a business casual sort of boot. And then here I am wearing them with a pair of jeans and a black Henley. So let me know what you think. I'm not totally sure if I pulled it off with the really casual outfit. I probably should have gone with like maybe a black tee. The Henley was probably a bit too casual, but yeah, let me know if you would be wearing these boots with a suit. I'm really, really curious to know if you'd be happy to do that. There are a few things I should point out about the aesthetic while we're talking about, like, first impressions. The first one, obviously, the leather itself. This is not any old calf leather. This is box calf leather. It's aniline dyed, so it has like a really nice, vibrant finish to it without being like really overbearing, like a pair of like Doc Martens or something, like low quality chrome tanned leather. I'm gonna talk about that a bit more in the leather section itself, but it is not any old calf leather. I also wanted to draw your attention to the fact that it's Goodyear welted, but it has a very, very subtle Goodyear welt going around the perimeter of the shoe. It is extraordinarily rare to see a pair of Goodyear welted shoes that don't have like a big kind of chunky lip going around it with really obvious like bright white stitching. So they've done a really impressive feat here of making a Goodyear welted shoe, which makes it fully resolable for decades and decades to come, and it makes it very water resistant as well, without making it look anything like a work boot. They've made it a very sophisticated boot, but still a Goodyear welt, which is enhanced by the fact that it's a 270-degree Goodyear welt. So you notice that the stitching disappears around the heel here, which gives it a nice, like, sort of a neat and more streamlined appearance to it. Getting a little closer, you've got an ever so slightly square toe here, which is not uncommon in European dressy shoes, but it's not like a very angular toe. Like, it's enough to be sharp, but not enough that it's like literally sharp, you know what I mean? Another thing worth pointing out here, what I'm about to describe to you is not quite as pronounced as it was when I first got these boots. As you can see, I have been wearing them around, and I've been putting shoe trees in them between wears as well. So everything isn't quite as perfectly immaculate as it was when I first got the shoes. Nonetheless, take a really close look at this toe here, and you'll notice it has a vertical shape to it, kind of like an ultra subtle ski jump at the end of the toe, which I think is really neat. And on a similar note, the leather on the edge of the vamp here has a nice curve to it on the inside of the foot. That helps support the arch and helps with comfort. And all this is because the lasting is really, really precise on these boots. And again, there's a leather outsole as well, which you can see I swiftly annihilated because leather outsoles very quickly get very beat up, but they got a lot of upsides as well. So I'm gonna get into that. There's a ton of stuff going on with the sole, but first of all, let's get a close look at this leather. Now, given this is a dressy shoe, you probably already assumed it was calf from the get-go, and it is. Calf skin is lighter and thinner in variable than cowhide or steerhide, like grown-up cow skin, and has a tighter, more even grain. In other words, it looks a bit less like skin and is a bit more uniform in appearance. It's plenty tough though. It's about 1.3 millimeters thick, which isn't crazy thick, that's like dress shoe width. But ounce for ounce, calf skin is said to have more tensile strength than cowhide. Then you get box calf, which is what this is. Box calf, even more suited to dressy shoes, is chrome tanned with an aniline finish. This mostly means it holds dye really well while retaining the natural surface. Indeed, it hasn't been split, buffed, or corrected, but it's very smooth and vibrant. Most of Carmina's leathers are from the famous tannery Danone in France, but their black box calf is actually from Germany's Weinheimer. Carmina does all the clicking, meaning they're the ones that cut out which bits of the hide will be used for the shoes. And the cutting is always done by hand, and each piece is skived for evenness. And all of this is done at Carmina's own factory. So they have quite a lot of control over the production process. They don't outsource any of their manufacturing to other factories like most other companies do. Carmina is very hands-on. And for caring for the leather, by the way, they sell a cream and a wax. The cream is to hydrate and condition, the wax to add some shine. As the sole, I know how hideous this sole looks. I guess I probably should have taken pictures before I wore them in, but you should know this is what happens to leather soles. But they still have upsides, right? For one, as they get beat up, they get better grip, which is important because I've fallen on my butt more than once walking down subway steps in leather soled shoes. Thank you, Fry. But other upsides with leather soles is relative to rubber or cork. They break in faster, they're more flexible, and they're softer. And man, are they soft. A lot of guys will only wear leather soles and leather uppers for this reason. And this is a vegetable tan. This is vegetable tan sole made with French leather that Carmina manufactures in-house in Inca. That's where they're located in Mallorca. Very important to note here is that this is closed channel stitching. So you know how most boots you see the stitching from the outside running around here? You can't here. What they do is cut into the outsole, peel back the leather, then it's sewn into the welt. Then the leather flap is glued down after they've put in the cork midsole and the shank. And the shank is compressed leather, not steel, by the way. So you don't see any channeling here, it's nice and smooth. And you can see the brass nails here to remind you that it's sturdily made. That's part of why the boots are so expensive. Another reason is the lasting, like I said earlier, and also the stitches per inch, the SPI on the Goodyear welt here. There are like 8 to 10 here per inch. Normally it's half that. And like I said, the stitching is really, really close to the leather. All this construction is capped off with a leather insole. So leather insole and outsole and shank, again, makes a really nice, soft, comfortable, and surprisingly lightweight shoe that really deserves a reputation for comfort. Now, as for the fit and sizing, some Americans might be frustrated by the predictable fact they use European sizing at this Spanish headquartered company. A general rule with European sizing is to go down a full size from your Brannock device size, your Brannock size. So I'm an 11.5 on a Brannock device. I would be a 10.5 in these. So all my European shoes like Trickers, also R.M. Williams, the Australian company which uses European sizing, all these guys, I'm a 10.5 in them. I'm a 10.5 in these Chelseas, and they fit me really well. You might want to double check with Carmina because I know sometimes depending on like where you are on like the spectrum of shoe sizes, that can be like a little bit different, but generally you go down a half size. As for the comfort, what's actually like walking around in these, it's really superb. Like the comfort is really, really fantastic with these, and I'm not being paid to say that. They just cost over $500, so I would expect them to be pretty comfortable, and they are, thank God. The leather outsole, the leather insole, yes, it has cons that I just mentioned, but yeah, the leather outsole definitely is really nice and comfortable. It's soft underfoot, very flexible, and really does conform to the foot nicely. Add all that to the fact that it's fully lined with calfskin leather, and it's a very, I know this is kind of a hyperbolic word to use, but it's a luxurious experience walking around in Carmina shoes. They do that very well with their brand. The only real downsides with the leather outsole is, of course, it doesn't really have any grip. The longer you wear them, the sole gets beaten up and gets like, nooks and crannies in it, and then that does actually wind up improving the grip, but nonetheless, not great grip. The main downside, I think, besides the fact that you have to sort of like hold onto the handrails going down steps the first couple weeks of wearing these, is that the Simpson last is fiendishly narrow. Now, if you have wide feet, you're gonna be out of luck with this brand. They do not have wide sizes. And if you are even on a slightly wider side of a D width foot, you might have some trouble here. Like I've seen some guys online say that even though they have like normal D width feet, they find this last too narrow. I think it's totally fine. I just think you need to remember when you get these that it's a dress shoe. So while it is very comfortable, especially underfoot, comfort isn't the priority. Like sleekness and formality are the priority here. They do that very well while being very comfortable underfoot and being just a little bit narrow at the end. So without any discounts or anything, $525 is the price you're looking at for a pair of Carmina Chelseas. And your jaw might drop at that, but among fancier guys, like guys who are into the European shoe community type thing, who like the nice Blake stitched Italian loafers and so on, all those guys, like to a person, they all say this is fantastic value for what you are getting on offer here. And relative to a lot of other brands in Europe who offer sort of similar products, this is actually on the cheaper side, which would make sense given that Carmina has their own factory and they do all their stuff there, right? So your question probably is, why is $525 actually very good value for a pair of shoes? So here are the reasons. The first is the very intricate and delicate lasting that I described earlier that produce all these lovely subtle protuberances that allow the boot to closely follow and support the natural shape of the foot. The box calf leather is also considered very high-end leather, and the leather is clicked and skived and cut all by hand in-house. There's closed channel stitching as well that definitely adds to the cost of a product. The very high stitches per inch on the Goodyear welt, and the fact that it's both a Goodyear welt and looks super dressy. Which sounds superficial, but it's actually a considerable feat of craftsmanship that they're able to make something with that kind of durable, water-resistant construction that still looks great with a suit. Now, if you don't care about any of that, like if you don't really care or appreciate the fact that it's very labor intensive and takes a lot more time and a lot more skill to do closed channel stitching, or if you don't really care that like the lasting here is so delicate that it ever so slightly follows the shape of the foot better than cheaper brands, like if you don't really think you're gonna feel that or care about it, the high SPI and the Goodyear, well, all that stuff. If that's all meaningless to you, get a cheaper pair of shoes. Like that's fine, no judgment, I get it. If that all seems ridiculous to you, I can definitely see why you would want to shell out for this. I will say, I think what really needs to be emphasized here is that among guys who know what they're looking at, guys who really understand like the amount of craftsmanship that goes into a pair of shoes, like the amount of like hands, the amount of years of skill you need to build up to be able to make a pair of shoes like this, all those guys consider this actually very good value for a pair of boots. All right, let's wrap this up with some pros and cons. The pros, I've already talked to Eric about this, but the craftsmanship really is top notch. The lasting is very intricate, all this sort of stuff. I acknowledge that plenty of guys don't care about that kind of stuff, but if you do, you'll be delighted with these shoes and most likely the price as well. The leather is also really beautiful here. Even for calf skin, this is remarkably soft and supple and fine and smooth. Very, very impressive. And then they're also very, very comfortable. Yes, the leather outsole doesn't have great grip, but the leather outsole, leather insole, and shank combination is always a good time for me. It's a really nice and soft on the feet walking around with these. All that combined with the leather lining as well makes for a very nice feeling, a very nice luxurious feeling on your feet. And I think especially if you're gonna be wearing these with a suit, which you very well might be, it's nice to have a comfortable pair of shoes on, given that suits themselves are usually pretty restrictive. The main downsides here, there are no other widths, the sole is not super grippy, don't take them hiking. Also, it's not hole cut leather. A lot of guys really like hole cut leather for their Chelsea boots. Aaron Williams is an example where there's just like one stitching around the back. There's actually 3 pieces of leather. I don't think it's a big deal, but yeah, some people not so happy about that. The stitching largely is superb on these boots, but if you notice here on the right boot, on the goring here, you see how it's not quite perfectly flush, the 2 pieces of leather here, they haven't been stitched together perfectly flush on this one side of one of the boots. Yeah, some people might take issue with that. I would never bother drawing attention to that on a pair of cheap boots, but given these are over 500 bucks, like yeah, there are people who will take issue with something like that. It's a tiny thing, but I did want to point it out because I have been taking a very close look at these to see just how perfect they are. The main thing to remember here, I think, with these boots, which I think I sort of just demonstrated, is that they are for the elegant, detail-oriented, sophisticated sort of guy, right? Not just a guy who wears a suit to work, but a guy who wears a tailored suit to work and knows where the fabric is from and that sort of thing. It's not just restricted to those people, of course, but what I'm saying is these shoes are a level above classy. They're very classy shoes, and classy isn't heritage, right? So if you like boots, if you like Goodyear welted boots because it's something you can kick around, you can wear with jeans, you can wear these shoes with jeans, I think, if they're nice, dark, relatively slim sort of jeans. But the message I'm trying to convey here is that these are the boots for a detail-oriented man who really is happy to pay a little bit extra for something that is a very good example of like craftsmanship and skill. So if that's you, you're gonna be happy with these boots, and again, I think you'll be okay with the price. All right, those are my thoughts on the very famous Carmina Chelsea boot. If you like them, there's a link to buy them in the description below. If not, totally fine. I've also got a review down there as well, like a full written review with a bunch of pictures and everything else. You can check that out on my website. And make sure you subscribe as well, because I've got a bunch more boot reviews, denim reviews, jacket reviews, and all sorts of men's fashion stuff coming up.